Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of the Railway Tales. Today we are going to be looking at the Q1 class built by Oliver Bulleid.
Chugging down the tracks, the whistle blows. Every mile a story, every stop a glow. From steam to diesel, the rails unwind. Railway tales take you on a ride through time. Hear the rhythm of the wheels, feel the heart of the rails. Stories unfold like tracks on endless trails. Through mountains, towns, and open plains. Come aboard, the journey remains. Railway tales, where the stories never end. On iron horses, with every bend. From sunrise rides to moonlit trails, hop on board, it's Railway Tales.
The Q1 class of locomotive was built in 1942 in response to its need for a more powerful locomotive during wartime Britain. Now, the Q-class locomotive is of an 060 variety, which means it has no leading wheels and no trailing wheels, just 6 powered driving wheels. The locomotive was built by Oliver Bulleid, and rumour has it that the famous engineer William Stanier visited the locomotive and said, "Where do you put the key?" as the locomotive itself resembles somewhat of an early diesel locomotive. However, this locomotive is built for steam. Now, the shape of this locomotive, as you can see, is quite square. Now, the reason for this is so that the locomotive can be driven through a carriage wash that the Southern Railway had, and able to clean it a lot faster. And you'll notice as well that the locomotive is very sparse with regards to all the normal fanfare you see on a locomotive. This is due to the austerity measures taken during the war and ease of maintenance as well. So everything, instead of being fitted to a frame, is fitted to the chassis of the locomotive. Now, some interesting facts on the locomotive itself. The engines weighed 90 tonnes, which was quite light for a steam locomotive, and being as a southern locomotive, it could travel over 97% of the Southern Railway's network, which was quite handy considering this locomotive was designed to haul freight rather than passenger coaches. The Q1 also has the largest fire grate of any 060 locomotive, being around about 27 square feet. Now, during its working life, the locomotives, the Q1s, had a few nicknames. One is very popular and everyone knows, called the Ugly Ducklings. And another 2 nicknames I found out about these locomotives were Coffee Pots and Charlies. Unsure why they were called Coffee Pots or Charlies, but if you do know, please do put in the comments below why you think they were called those. The Q1s were also the last production of a British mainline 060 locomotive. Later designs tend to go with the 260 wheel arrangement rather than the 060, which is quite Victorian in design. Although being built during the war years, the Q1 locomotives were actually given a rare classification, which meant 5F. Now, 5F stands for power ratio number 5 under British rail regulations, and F stands for freight, as they weren't designed for passenger work. Now, although I mentioned the fact that the Q1 was a freight locomotive, from time to time the locomotive did end up on secondary passenger duties, predominantly on branch lines that it was working on just to help out during the war effort. Now, in total, there was 40 of the class built from number 33001 to 33040. and they were shedded in various locations, mainly between Guildford, Feltham, Eastleigh and Tunbridge. Later, Three Bridges and Nine Elms also got these locomotives. Now, sadly for these locomotives, withdrawals began 21 years later after the first one was built in 1963, and the final locomotive was withdrawn in 1966. Now, all was not lost for the Q1s, because one did make it into preservation, and we're going to talk about that locomotive now. So, locomotive number 33001 was built in Brighton in 1942 and spent most of its working life at Guildford. It left there in May 1958 when it was transferred to Tunbridge, and in February 1961 it was moved to Feltham before returning back to Guildford in September of 1963, where it was withdrawn in May of 1964. However, being the first member of the class and numbered C1, Southern Region having a weird numbering system which we'll go into in another video, it has been preserved by the National Railway Museum, where it currently sits on static display. Before it went to York, the locomotive was on the Bluebell Railway in East Sussex, where it was based there from 1977 to 2004. The locomotive last had a major overhaul in 1992. Now, although the Q1 locomotives were very powerful locomotives, they did have some flaws, and their main flaw was their braking system, and it is reported that during operational times the brakes on the locomotives were not brilliant during unfitted freight trains. And an unfitted freight train is where it's mainly the locomotive or the brake van that applies the brake to slow the train down and bring it to a stop. This is due to the fact that the tender on the locomotive was very lightly made and the brakes were not brilliant on the tender. Now, apart from that, all I can find on the Q1 locomotives is that during the 1940s and 50s, one of the class, number 33013, was involved in an accident at Hampton Court. Not caused by itself, caused by another train, where the locomotive struck a derailed carriage from another train. There was some damage to the tender of 33013, however, it returned to service shortly after. And that's all I have to say on the locomotives of the Q1 class on the Southern Railway. Now, I have made some footage using Train Simulator Classic for you guys to watch, and of course found some archival footage as well that I'm going to put here now in the video, so I hope you enjoy.
chugging down the tracks, the whistle blows. Every mile a story, every stop a glow.